every single person has resilience. There's measures of resilience. Some people don't tap into their resilience because they don't really have the tools or the guidance to know how to get there. And then there are others that seem like they kind of recover faster and they're better for it on the other side. So resilience to me is how I recover. I don't always want to just bounce back up. I don't want to just get struck down and I'm bouncing back because maybe the place I started from is not where I wanted to be. So for me, resilience is now, if I get knocked down, when I get back up, am I landing in the place I'm supposed to be?
We're your co-hosts, Vicky and Laura, and this is the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast, the ultimate guide for ambitious business founders and startups. Hear from business heroes who've faced unexpected challenges as we unpack how they slayed their dragon and reignite your instinct to conquer your dragon.
Sherrie-Lynn, welcome to the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast. We're very excited to have you here today. Can you tell us a bit about your childhood experiences and how they shaped you into you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me as well. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I am a Bermudian-born young woman that grew up in St. George's with my mom and my dad for a little bit. I am one of five. I'm a middle child, although I personally don't believe I had middle child syndrome, if you ask me. Ask my siblings, they may say something else. But I have three brothers and one sister. And I think a lot of my upbringing up until my parents' divorce was relatively typical, working a working class family. But it was in those very, very early years that I had my first experience with trauma. And it was early. I was 7. And I think that shifted me a bit in the midst of, that's part of in human development. That's part of like one of the most important times in a child's life. And I had a traumatic experience at that time. And I think that had a lot to do with how I grew into my later childhood, my teen years, my young adult years, all the way forward. So I think I was also always an introvert. I'm actually quite shy and introverted, although everybody always sees me with a microphone. I would prefer not. But after this traumatic incident, which was a sexual assault at age 7, what changed a lot for me is that I became much more withdrawn and much more isolated inside of myself. And it wasn't because I knew that that's what a normal reaction should be. It's that at 7, I wasn't quite sure what had happened to me, but I also knew that something had happened and I didn't know what to do about it. Of course, part of what came with that was the typical, don't tell anybody, it's our secret. If you tell, you're going to be the one that gets in trouble type of thing. So that was the other reason that I kind of kept it to myself. It's funny because when I look in retrospect now, I feel like I had an awareness that I wanted someone to see me, to see that something had happened, and no one did. And so because life went on with everyone else, I just let life go on. And so it affected me in some negative ways, but for the most part, I stayed shy and introverted and loved my books, which has served me very, very well. And went on through primary school and secondary school, kind of feeling alone a lot and probably suffering with some mild depression as a child. But for the most part, it was really just outside of that. I played and enjoyed my siblings. My parents got divorced when I was 11 and became a little difficult after that as well. But it was really just kind of pressing through all of the challenges that came with different types of traumatic experiences that, I encountered over my childhood. And I found that, I don't know, I felt very different in my family. It's weird. And I almost felt like I didn't have a choice but to figure out how to process it and keep going. Now I'm using words today that I didn't possess back then. I just did it. My mom was a single mom, and these children she had to feed, and so when things happened, I kind of pushed myself over it and kept moving. It would not be helpful later. So as I came into young adulthood, um, especially when I started dating and those kinds of things. And that's where you really saw these things showing up, not in the most positive ways. I was very shy. I had low self-esteem. I was also very defensive. So I was afraid of getting hurt.
Right.
So my defenses would go up. And if I felt like you were getting too close, I would sabotage the relationship. Again, all kind of ideas that I know now, I didn't quite know then, but were resulting from, a lot of childhood trauma. On a positive note, I loved people always. I was always like the best listener. I could just sit and listen to people all the time. And so it made sense when the opportunity presented itself for me to get my education, which was as an adult. Psychology and counseling was a natural lean. And so, I was always a great listener. I was always mentoring people and having young people around me, and even older people that wanted to sit and chat. And so that came very naturally to me, and I enjoyed it very much. It gave me a lot of peace sometimes, actually. So that's a little bit of my childhood. Yeah, running around the streets of Bermuda and trying to be a good girl. But, most times I succeeded. The other times I won't talk about. But that's a little bit about how I grew up.
Such an incredible story. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably with us. And thank you for sharing your journey, because we know that as we hear from other people who've been through experiences that perhaps some of our viewers or listeners have also been through, that will give them strength, that will help them feel resilient, and certainly help them know that they're not alone, and that even as an adult, there's something you can do to get your life thriving versus feeling in a reactionary or survival mode. And you articulated it so well and so deeply, clearly, because as you reveal, you are a counselor. You do have the psychology background. You understand now as an adult what was your reality then. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Hang on, hold that thought. I apologize for the interruption. I just wanted to take 15 seconds of your time to thank you for being a part of this growing community of resilient entrepreneurs. If you could do us just one massive favor and subscribe, you'll be notified of the next great episode of this podcast. And speaking of great episodes, let's get right back to it.
And then, Sherrie, then the resilience train didn't stop there. I think there's more to your story in today's present day that perhaps we can share with our listeners and viewers.
Sure. One thing I left out was that in the middle of all of that, at age 14, I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa. And that is a degenerative eye disease, retinal disease, for which there is no treatment or cure. So at age 14, my mom and dad took me to New York, where I was diagnosed and was told, okay, most likely by age 40, you're going to be totally blind. And I just remember the doctor I went to was State University of New York College of Optometry. I still go there, by the way. They say that I have one of the thickest files they've ever seen. When they had to digitize everything, it took them forever. But it's a teaching institution. And so at the time, this would have been considered very rare. So I remember having the examinations and everything, but I remember this line of people, and it was students. And I'm like, I had no idea what was going on. I'm 14. And so finally I was like, wait, stop. And the doctor just rushed everybody out, and I just like was throwing a hissy fit. Like, why are all these people poking and prodding at my face? And that's when he came in and brought my parents in. I said, listen, just break it down. Tell me, exactly what this is. And it was devastating. And I went immediately into denial right away. I didn't wait. I didn't even ponder the possibility because I had so much vision at the time that it just didn't make sense. So that also has been a journey. I was 14. By 40, I wasn't totally blind, but I was almost 100% blind. I went totally blind probably about 3.5 years later. So that's another part of my story. And I think um, when you ask a question about how do these things kind of shape who you become, I will say that although some of it can sound really, really horrible and terrible, I think that everything in our lives potentially walks us into the spaces that we're supposed to be in. So I've learned how to take these things now with a lot of work. It didn't happen overnight, and really use them as tools. My blindness is my superpower because most people don't know it right away. And so people tend to want to lean in a little bit more because they're just curious about what this blind girl is about to do. And then the rest of my story is really just helping people to recover and to also understand that you don't have to be trapped, by your past, by your circumstances. So if I bring it all the way forward, yeah, so now at 43 years old and blind, I went off to college and earned my bachelor's degree in psychology and counseling, and then off to my master's degree, which was kind of a sort of like a bet that I lost. And off I went to my master's degree and earned my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And then I wasn't satisfied with that, so I went off and I got certified as a certified professional wellness coach for those people that didn't want to come into the counseling space and do the deeper work. So I do coaching. And now my newest venture is just Sherrie-Lynn Lilley, the speaker, who is learning how to effectively tell my story so that people walk away feeling more empowered, feeling like there's a step that they can take out of one place into a new place. So I have a practice here in Bermuda, a counseling practice called Numa. And here I do traditional and non-traditional mental health counseling. And then with my coaching business, currently I'm not seeing individual clients because I'm going on this other trajectory around speaking. I may have some groups later, but the coaching business is the means by which the speaking is coming forward. And yeah, so now I'm launching out into the speaking arena. So that's kind of where it all has led me. And I hope I tied that in so that people understand, yeah, like it does shape you. And sometimes in the beginning, the way it shapes you doesn't always feel like you're going to end up somewhere really positive or in a good space. But that is because you have to be an active participant in your life. And I chose to be an active participant in my life. And that happened about 13 years ago, which was another trauma. Oh my gosh, my life's full of trauma. But it has definitely brought me where I am. So I have no regrets. They're all tools in my toolbox now. So
Yeah. Well, they say the difference between a hero and a villain is how they dealt with their trauma.
I love it. Never heard
Right?
that before.
Yes. Well, we all have trauma in lots of different ways, and
Yeah.
and it's how we deal with it that's so important. And because a lot of the people who listen to our podcast, we know are entrepreneurs who are maybe in the startup early stages of business. Maybe they're starting a side hustle, or maybe they're jumping full force into this crazy entrepreneur journey. Tell us
Hmm.
about what that journey started out like for you when you first became a business owner. You had unique challenges how
Yeah.
was it for you? Tell us your story of starting up.
Yeah. So my first business actually wasn't Numa. It was Heal, which is my coaching business, which I started in 2015. And that really was because I was feeling much more empowered. I had been in my own therapeutic work at that time for about 3 or 4 years, like consistently. And I just wanted to help other people. And so I started my coaching business first. And I did see several, like quite a few. I had a few regular individual clients. I didn't take that as seriously. I didn't really think about it as a business at first. I don't know what I was thinking, but I started it. I started in New York, so I LLC'd it and everything that I was supposed to do. but I didn't manage it really well as a business owner. And that's because I didn't have any business experience. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I just said, I'm going to help people. And so I set up something and then made appointments, and that's it. So it kind of got paused a bit while I went off to school. And when school ended, I was coming home more often as my mom is aging and wanted to spend more time in Bermuda. And one trip I said, well, I have all these degrees now. I might as well do something with them. Let me see how difficult it is in Bermuda to have a practice. And I started that journey in June of 2022. And by the end of July of 2022, I had a whole business that I had no intention of really starting. I was supposed to be exploring. And because the steps were pretty straightforward and pretty easy, I just went for it. I just dove in, and each step of the way I kept saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? But I just kept going for it. And I knew it's something that I could do. I knew it's something I wanted to do, but there was one thing I was going to do different. And that was, I was going to learn how to run a business, how to be an entrepreneur, a business owner. The counseling part comes easy. I needed to learn about finances and accounting and taxes and social insurance and filing and all of these things that I'm still learning 3 years later. But I needed to make sure that that was also established so I could have some longevity. And so, as a young, I still consider myself a young entrepreneur. I've had a lot of growing pains. And one of the biggest obstacles or challenges, not really an obstacle, challenges were, really finding people I could trust. I'm blind. And so having people see things through my eyes is very important to me. I am my brand, and my business is my brand. My counseling is my brand. And so when I do events, which I love to do events, I don't just sit behind my screen all day talking to individual clients, which I love, but I do community conversations and mental health conversations and education. I do professional development. I'll go out and do any, kind of learning sessions. I also am an on-call counselor for the Centers Against Abuse here in Bermuda. So sometimes I go out to do domestic violence education. So getting comfortable with trusting people was very, very hard. And it got even harder when I feel like that trust was betrayed at one point by someone that was very close to the business. And I had to really pull up my big girl socks because I'm non-confrontational, and I wanted to negotiate it out. And I have difficulty cutting ties. But this was a situation where I had to just cut the ties and cry my tears and know that it wasn't as catastrophic as I thought it was because I caught it early enough, and then recover, learn, and move forward. And that's that's just an example of one of the growing pains that I went through. But yeah, it's been a lovely journey. I really have enjoyed. Now I can look back and say that period I learned from it. I can't say I enjoyed it, but outside of that, everything else has been such an amazing and wonderful learning experience.
You really do have your stories, and I love that you share them so freely, Sherrie-Lynn. And when you're speaking on those stages, these stories are going to not only inspire but elevate people. Sherrie-Lynn, your experience is really, it's priceless for other entrepreneurs to hear about. And you talk as if it's not a big deal, all these amazing things that you've already achieved, and yet you still have big dreams. And I love that. And I'm also aware that you were part of and a finalist. Tell us the details of a BEDC United Nations Entrepreneurship Program. BEDC being the organization in Bermuda, because we have an international audience, so they'll need to know what that is. It's an organization in Bermuda that supports small business development. So tell us about that experience for you. And I understand that it ended up being something quite different to what you anticipated.
Yeah, for sure. Anything BEDC has, I sign up for. I'm always looking to learn, and that's where our small business administration kind of thing. So I got this email that basically said they were going to be having this, well, they were already in this partnership with the United Nations women's initiatives of some kind. There's long titles that I'm going to mess up, so I'll just leave it as that. Some women's initiatives. And this particular program was coming up. It was one of the last as the 3-year partnership was starting to end. And it was a pitch program. And being the Shark Tank fanatic that I am, as all entrepreneurs should be,
Yes, agreed.
I was like, yes, right. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. So, but I'm gonna apply, and maybe they'll select me or not. But they did, and then once they selected me, I was like, oh, what am I gonna pitch for? So it was a wonderful program. We had these amazing global entrepreneurs that were successful and wealthy, and they were coming in and teaching us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we had an hour with instruction, and then we had an hour where we had to practice our pitches. So I have to be honest, I ditched pitching all the way to the very end. Every week I was the one that wasn't going to pitch because I'm sitting in the room with all these amazing other entrepreneurs and they all had a product and I didn't have a product. And so I'm like, well, what am I here for? And so I thought, well, maybe what I want to pitch is I want to expand mental health education in the community, which is something I really love. And right now I do it for free, which in Bermuda makes life not that easy, right? So, and I will continue to do it for free. But I'm like, if I pitch for that, then maybe I'll get an investor that'll support my mental. So this is where my brain was going. But I still didn't pitch anything. And then finally, one of the founders, we were connected with this organization called the Founders Institute, said, I'm going to help you because you have to put together this pitch deck and all this stuff. And this is an accelerated program, and we don't want you to feel like you're going to get stuck. And in the process of that, this young man, his name was Jordan, he said to me, "You're pitching the wrong thing." And I was like, well, how could he tell me that? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, you should be pitching for public speaking. And I said, okay. It didn't click immediately. And I said, okay. And so we were on a time crunch. So I switched everything around and I put together this new pitch. And on the very last day, the night before the practice session, I finally pitched. So because I didn't want to go into it in my class, be like, well, how come she didn't have to pitch? So I did my pitch the night before in the practice session, and there was silence. Now, silence for a blind person is deafening.
Sure.
Because I couldn't read the room, and there was silence, and 30 seconds was a lifetime. So finally, one of the mentors that was here from the UN, she spoke up on behalf of the whole room, and she said, Sherrie, because she must have seen my face. I was about to cry. I was really living my worst nightmare in that moment. And she said, listen, I just want to tell you, I'm looking around the room, and I'll tell you that I see tears. I see a contemplation, and I'll speak for myself, but I was completely flabbergasted and taken aback, and I didn't have words to say, and that was amazing. And you really must go into public speaking. And then she said something very significant. She said, have you ever considered that you are your brand? And I said, no. I didn't even really know what she meant. So, even as part of becoming an entrepreneur and the entrepreneurial journey, it's like all of these things don't always, like all of the terminology and the wordology doesn't always make sense in the beginning. And so I said to her, can we talk about it, later? Because I really didn't know what she meant. And we did have a chance to talk about it. And I got such clarity around where I was supposed to go from there. It made a lot of sense. I actually did not realize I had already been building toward it. So a lot of the work I was already doing was moving me into this space. And now it was kind of coming, to a head, so to speak. And then I did the pitch, and it was well received. and I was petrified. And they threw me off, by the way, because they gave me this whole special announcement, which I was not happy about. I don't like to be singled out because the disability does that by itself. And so, because I was a little perturbed about how they introduced me, I kind of lost my whole pitch. So when you guys watched it, there were pauses, and those pauses were me recollecting my pitch. But thank God I was able to get through it, and it has definitely changed my life. And that sounds very grandiose, but I'm very serious because I now know that there's such power in my ability to tell stories. It's a gift, and I'm realizing that more and more. I'm getting used to going back and listening to things I've recorded, which I never used to like to do. And now I'm listening with a different ear because I want my stories to always be powerful and transformational and effective. And so that's what that program did for me. And I'm very grateful, extremely grateful.
So much of what you just said is so important for other entrepreneurs to understand, like how important being able to pitch is, how important being your brand is. We often work with entrepreneurs who say, "Oh, I just want, some social media, but I don't want to be in the social media. I don't want my picture. I don't want to do video. I don't want to." And I understand. And like you said, you're a shy person, right? So it's
Mhm.
not like natural to you to have to do this, but you understand the value of it because when you do show yourself authentically real, talk about yourself, talk about your stories, your traumas, the effect that that has on other people is tremendous. And congratulations for being that person who stands up and shares the light and shows others what they're supposed to be doing too, because it's really important to get that message out. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, how do you get brave enough to get on that stage and pitch? Because most people are not that brave.
a lot of self-care, honestly. Um, I have these interesting experiences where when I share, depending on what the setting is, um, sometimes my sharing requires more vulnerability than others. In the settings where I'm not having to be as vulnerable, I have less of an after effect. But in settings that call upon me to be a little bit more vulnerable, then usually a day or two after, I have a whole mental, emotional kind of space where I have to decompress and quiet a lot of the voices that are really my traumas being reactivated. But because I'm a trigger specialist, I know how to handle my triggers, and it does take a lot of courage. And so I do a lot of self care. I do a lot of pouring back into me. I do a lot of follow up in ensuring that people feel safe about what they're not only what they're receiving, like what they're hearing, but they don't feel like I'm too imposing. So I do a lot of work in caring for my own mind. I do things that I enjoy. I bowl. and spend a lot of time with my children. I have a little grandbaby, but I do a lot of self care to help stay replenished. And I don't pour out without pouring back in. It's very important. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, where the work that you're doing requires that level of vulnerability, it's still important to pour back into yourself what you are pouring out. Right? It's not healthy, and you won't feel good about being an entrepreneur if you're burnt out in year one. So it's so important to just find your harmony. I don't believe in balance. I think it's important to find your harmony and to live it out honestly for yourself. So that's how a lot of courage. I have people around me that pour back into me. I have wonderful mentors. I think that's also important. And I have mentors that play different roles. Some mentors are specifically for business. Some of them are a combination of business and personal. And then I have a couple of two best friends that are just there to do the hey girl, get it together type of thing. So mentorship, I think, is also imperative to my overall well-being.
And no doubt you're also mentoring others,
Yes.
either consciously or not.
Which is why it's important to make sure I'm getting poured into, because sometimes I'm pouring out and don't even realize it.
Yeah. I mean, especially in the field, that you've chosen to be a consultant, counselor, sorry. You're constantly helping others with their traumas and their triggers and
Yeah.
their, things. So you do have to protect yourself. How does one protect themselves mentally? You
Yeah.
have so much training. So give some advice for someone who maybe does, help others, but it isn't trained as you are.
Number one is boundaries. So I work primarily from home, but I finish as soon as that last client of the day is done. I'm finished, and off goes the working platform. So boundaries are important to make sure that I'm not engrossed in, and I can do that because Mondays is my admin day.
Mhm.
So I can always catch up on certain things on a Monday. And then Fridays, I only see clients in the morning. I do these things on purpose because I know how important it is with the type of work that I do. A lot of my clients are clients that are living with domestic violence. And so it's so important that, like, a Friday afternoon all the way until a Tuesday morning, I'm not really immersed in the traumatic work. So I have long weekends every weekend. Although Mondays is my admin day, I sit and I handle all of my accounting. I update my schedules. I respond to emails. I do that on a Monday, but on a Friday afternoon is when I start to decompress and get ready to relax for the weekend. Or sometimes on a Friday, I might prepare like workshops or anything that's coming up. But I just boundaries is a big one. The second thing is something called supervision. Supervision in the psychology field means that another professional, you're meeting with another professional with the same credentials or higher than yourself, and specifically around work. So
Mhm.
there you can talk about cases if you want. You can talk about how the work is impacting you. That supervisor is checking in on your well-being around work. Are you setting healthy boundaries? Are you ensuring that you're living up to your ethical responsibilities? Right. And they're also checking in on your professional growth. Are you doing your professional development? So supervision is very important. So I do supervision twice a month. I also conduct supervision. So for right now, I have two. My first two supervision is new for me. I just added it as of January, and I have two clients. So I do supervision for two helping professionals in Bermuda that take care of others to make sure that they are well, so they can be effective in their work. So a lot of the way I protect myself, and I don't take it home. I really don't. That took a little while to learn. I definitely, while I was training, I really had to lean into not taking the work home, because at that time I was literally out in a domestic violence shelter in New York City, and I wanted to take them all home,
Yeah.
literally. But now I really have learned that I can equip people, and they can learn how to move from surviving to striving and thriving. And so I do my best to equip them with what they need. And then I'm able to kind of walk away at the end of the day and kind of enjoy my life with my family without feeling the weight of everybody else's situations that I'm dealing with on a day in and day out basis.
Thank you for that. And Sherrie-Lynn, I also know just from background information that you talk about surviving and thriving. You've also been featured in suicide survival articles and information to try and be debunk the I guess it's a stigmatization, isn't it, of this topic. Is that something you could speak into?
Yes, I'm a certified suicide prevention educator and counselor. And so last year, here in Bermuda, I conducted a 1 day workshop in partnership with the PACE department at Bermuda College. And I was very proud to have 32 people sign up and pay to come and learn some suicide prevention because it's very highly stigmatized in Bermuda still. And my understanding was that there have been smaller pockets of this type of training. I don't know. I've never been to one in Bermuda, but mostly for medical professionals that wasn't open to the public. And so this was probably the first time that this was ever done in Bermuda. And it was done on World Suicide Prevention Day. But what kind of led me to want to have a specialty area around suicide and suicide prevention was that the childhood trauma that I've shared about already here, I didn't have a space to understand what I had been through and what to do with all of the things that came with being a child that had trauma. And so I carried it all into my adulthood. I got married very young, looking for the love that I thought I was missing. I was 20 years old. And I married someone that also just had a lot of brokenness. And so about maybe 4 years into the relationship, I was really having a lot of anxiety. I was deeply depressed. This was a person that was not always verbally kind to me. By that time, I had a little 2-year-old son. And a lot of what I had already been saying to myself for years about my worthiness, about how I saw myself. I didn't have positive things to say about myself. And here came a person that was reinforcing. He wasn't giving me new stuff. He was reinforcing stuff that I had been saying all along. And the accumulative effect of all of this negative self-talk. I'm unworthy. I'm dirty. I'm broken. I'm this. I'm that. Led me to actually having suicidal ideations. And in my early 20s, I was probably about 23. I attempted suicide twice. And of course, by the grace of God, I'm still here. But it was shortly after that I had my first introduction into some counseling. And growing up in Bermuda, and also growing up in a very religious family, I didn't have access to that when I was young, when I really needed it. I still really need it. But, at the time, when I really needed someone to talk to and I didn't have anyone, it just accumulates. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. If you have trauma and you don't deal with it, it doesn't go away. What happens is that you can start looking at your behaviors, and whether it comes up as anxiety or whether it comes up as really maladaptive ways of handling relationships, it can just show up in all kinds of ways. And the more you distance yourself away from the trauma itself, the less that you recall that this is as a result of your trauma. So people will start to categorize you, you're this or you're that. And, she's just an angry person, or, those types of things. And a lot of times if you just sit with someone, that's why I'm such an advocate for therapy. Because sometimes when you sit down, you'll start to unpack and realize, wait a minute, that really did make me angry when I was 14 and I'm 55, So, so that's why this work, suicidal work, is very, very important to me. I lived it. I got through it. I survived it. I have not had a suicidal thought in 27, 28 years. Stress doesn't even take me there at all. My brain doesn't go there at all because I had to teach myself, train myself. And now I hope to do that for others. And not only me do it for others, but train others on how to do it. And I can teach others how to do it for themselves. And so that's why it's really important to me.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this work. Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Because I know you save lives and help families and put people back together when they feel like they're falling apart. And it's tough work. And it's
Very tough.
such important work. And you are probably the person you needed all those years ago. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's so beautiful. I think so many entrepreneurs follow that journey. They sort of become the person they needed at some point in their
Mm-hmm.
life. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's when you find real purpose. If you're out there looking for your purpose, figure out if you can be the person that you needed once upon a time. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's the drive. I can feel it. I can hear it in your voice, in your emotion, in your connection to it. You are so living in purpose in this beautiful spirit. And that's what Numa means. Is that right?
It
Breath?
means breath,
Yeah.
spirit, life. Yes. And
Beautiful.
I think you're saying something that's so important too as an entrepreneur. Like anybody can wake up and just go, I'm going to start a business.
Hmm.
But I think that when you figure out how to take what you have and whether it's what you have acquired on your own or whether what it's something that landed in your lap, when you can take it and shape it into something so meaningful. I think that's why you end up with serial entrepreneurs. I'm now two business, well, you might as well call it three businesses in, and I have other ideas. My children are like, Mom, slow down. But yeah, I think that it makes a lot of sense. It also makes the entrepreneurial journey um, a happy one. So no matter what the struggles are, like I enjoy it. I enjoy it every day. Even when I'm feeling disgruntled about something that didn't go right on a particular day or, it's tax time and I'm like, but I enjoy it every day. I enjoy being able to wake up and create what I want in the moment, in that day. I love creating my own work and having my own work schedule. And I love it. I love everything about being an entrepreneur. But I think mostly what I love is what you're just expressing, which is that for me, my entrepreneurial journey is indeed my purpose.
Yeah. It's so clear. It's so clear. What's your definition of resilience?
Well, yeah, I had an epiphany recently, like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now. But as I was thinking about resilience, because resilience is going to be one of the key areas that I cover as I go out to speak, um, I always thought of resilience as the weeble wobble thing, the thing that you punch and it bounces back up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it didn't resonate well with me. But so I started to think about how have I been resilient? What has it meant? First of all, every single person has resilience. There's measures of resilience. Some people don't tap into their resilience because they don't really have the tools or the guidance to know how to get there. And then there are others that seem like they kind of recover faster and they're better for it on the other side. So resilience to me is how I recover. I don't always want to just bounce back up. I don't want to just get struck down and I'm bouncing back
Mm.
because maybe the place I started from is not where I wanted to be. So for me, resilience is now if I get knocked down, when I get back up, am I landing in the place I'm supposed to be? It might be a completely different place altogether. What was behind me getting knocked down in the first place? What was it that caused me to fall or to falter? Was it the result of somebody else's doing? These are all factors in how we get knocked down, but I think that they're also factors in where we land when we get back up. I don't always want to land back where I was. So for me, resilience is the recovery and it's looking for the space to land that's going to allow me to move forward. So that's it. Nothing super scientific, but I just wanted to take it beyond just the idea of just bouncing back because it's not just bouncing back. I think that's a piece of it. I think it's landing in a new space and understanding how to take that fall down, knock down, however it came about, and again use it to help to continue to propel you forward.
How good does that feel to think about resilience that way and to know that when you've gotten knocked down, it's the beginning of something new? Yeah, that's a great frame. Thank you for that. Yeah.
I think that's my favorite definition of resilience yet. Like, that's such a good one. It's just such a positive way to reframe exactly what you're saying. You get knocked down and you get propelled forward. It's such a different mindset and such a good one for all of us on this crazy journey called entrepreneurship. That we get knocked down, we hit the speed bumps, we sometimes we get run over, all the things happen. We know it's a difficult journey, but it is, like you said, so worth it because when you're in your purpose and you're doing great things and we just see nothing but great things in your future, oh my God, you're going to be on every stage. Maybe you're even going to be on Shark Tank. You are one of the most resilient people I've ever met, and you're helping others become more resilient. So it's beautiful. And we're so grateful to have you here on this podcast because you are the definition of everything that we think is really important about this journey and this incredible space that we love to sit in. So thank you for your
Mhm.
time. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being so open and honest and vulnerable. It is very, very much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.